A few weeks ago, my stepmother and father organized a professional photo shoot with their daughters. It sounded so sweet and wholesome, the kind of thing you'd see in a magazine or a picture frame on a mantelpiece. But guess what? I wasn't invited. Not a word, not a hint, nothing. I only found out when my dad casually mentioned it in passing, like it was no big deal. Can you imagine hearing something like that and trying to act like it didn't bother you? I smiled, nodded, and pretended it didn't feel like someone had just punched me in the gut. But inside I was crumbling. It's not like this was the first time something like this happened. I felt excluded before. Little things, small moments that seem insignificant to everyone else, pile up over time until they start to feel like a mountain I can't climb. But this photo shoot, this wasn't small. This was deliberate. This was planned. And I wasn't even considered. Do you know what that feels like? It's like being the kid on the playground no one picks for their team. You're standing there waiting, hoping someone will look at you and say, "Hey, you're with us." But they don't. They don't even notice you're there. I spent hours trying to make sense of it. Why didn't they include me? Was it an oversight? Was I forgotten? Or, this is the part that stings the most, was it intentional? The idea that my stepmother and father might have chosen to exclude me on purpose is a thought that loops in my head, over and over. Maybe it's because I'm not their biological child. Maybe I don't fit the picture-perfect family image they wanted to create. Is that what it is? Am I just not good enough to stand next to them in a photograph? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at them but at myself too. Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I ask why I wasn't invited? Instead, I sat there quietly, swallowing my feelings like I always do. And the worst part is, I knew they wouldn't even realize I was upset. They'd carry on, laughing and smiling in their picture-perfect photos, completely oblivious to the fact that I was sitting at home, staring at my phone, feeling like I didn't belong. And it wasn't just anger, it was hurt, deep, cutting hurt. Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, you'll never be enough for the people you love? That's how I felt. I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? Why don't they want me there? I replayed every moment I'd ever spent with my stepmother and father, analyzing every word, every glance, trying to figure out what I did wrong. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting to feel like you're in a constant battle for a place in your own family. Blended families are complicated. Get that. There are so many moving pieces, so many dynamics to navigate. But I thought we were doing okay. I thought we'd reached a point where I mattered. Clearly I was wrong. That photo shoot was a glaring reminder that I'm not really part of their family. I'm just not a daughter, not a sibling. Just someone who lives under the same roof and shares a last name but not much else. I couldn't stop imagining what the day of the photo shoot was like. Were they laughing together as the photographer adjusted the lighting? Did they all coordinate outfits, joking about who looked the best? And here I was, left out of a moment I'll never get to be part of. It's a kind of loneliness that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. It's not just about missing the photo. It's about missing the connection, the memories, the feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself. I even tried to justify it to myself. Maybe they thought I wouldn't want to be there. Maybe they were trying to make things easier by not including me. But no matter how many excuses I came up with, it didn't change the way I felt. I was still hurt. I was still angry. And honestly, I was still heartbroken. Do they see me as an outsider? Am I just a reminder of the life my dad had before he married my stepmother? These questions circled in my mind like vultures, picking apart my self-esteem piece by piece. It's so frustrating because I love my dad. I love my family. I want to feel close to them. I want to be part of their lives in a way that feels real and meaningful. But how can I do that when they keep shutting me out? How can I build a relationship when they won't even let me in the door? I started thinking about all the other times I'd been excluded, all the times I'd been overlooked. This photo shoot wasn't just one isolated event. It was the culmination of years of feeling like I didn't matter. And that's the hardest part. It's not about one picture. It's about what that picture represents. Family, bond, connection. And my absence from it speaks volumes. At the end of the day, I just want what everyone wants: to feel like I belong, to feel like I'm part of something, to feel like I'm seen. But that day, I didn't feel any of those things. I felt invisible, felt forgotten, and I felt alone. After the initial sting of being left out of the family photo shoot, the emotions started to pile up. Hurt turned into anger. Anger morphed into confusion. And eventually, confusion gave way to a heavy, sinking sadness. It wasn't just about the photo anymore. It was about everything that moment represented. A snapshot of their perfect family without me. Can you imagine how that feels? To see a family moment being crafted and realizing you're not a part of it. It cuts deeper than words can describe. I started questioning everything. Was this just another oversight, or was it a reflection of how they truly see me? Am I an afterthought to them? Or worse, am I some sort of inconvenience? I tried to convince myself it wasn't personal, that maybe I was reading too much into it. But deep down I knew better. This wasn't the first time I'd felt this way. It wasn't even the second or third. This was a pattern, a series of small, seemingly insignificant actions that screamed, "You don't belong." And that realization, it hurt like hell. I found myself replaying past moments in my head, digging up every time I'd felt excluded or overlooked. Birthdays where my gifts were an afterthought. Family dinners where my voice didn't seem to matter. Little things that seemed harmless in the moment but added up to this overwhelming feeling of being on the outside. It was like my mind was determined to gather evidence to prove the point. I wasn't really part of the family. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. But it wasn't just anger at them, it was anger at myself too. Why do I let this happen? Why do I keep quiet and swallow my feelings every single time? Why can't I just speak up and say, "Hey, this hurts. I feel left out"? The truth is, I was scared. Scared of being dismissed, scared of being told I was overreacting, scared of making things worse. So instead of standing up for myself, I let the resentment fester inside me like a wound that wouldn't heal. I started analyzing my stepmother and father's actions, trying to understand their perspective. Maybe they didn't think the photo shoot was a big deal. Maybe they didn't realize how much it would hurt me to be left out. Or maybe, and this is the part that kept me awake at night, they did realize and they just didn't care. I hated that thought, but it lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind like an unwelcome guest. Was I really that easy to overlook? It's so strange how something as simple as a photo shoot can unravel so many buried emotions. It made me think about my place in this blended family. Where do I fit in? Do I even fit in at all? My dad has his life with my stepmother and their daughters, and it seems so complete, perfect even. And me, I feel like an accessory. Something that doesn't quite match but gets kept around out of obligation. I tried to distract myself from these thoughts, but they followed me everywhere. Watching TV, scrolling through social media, even trying to focus on work or school. My mind always wandered back to that damn photo shoot. Were they smiling, laughing, having fun without me? The images in my head felt like a cruel movie reel that I couldn't turn off. And the worst part, I knew those moments were now memories I'd never be part of. They'd look at those photos years from now, reminiscing about that day, and I'd be just a ghost. Someone who wasn't even there. Part of me wanted to confront my dad about it, to ask him why I wasn't included. But another part of me, the part that's been hurt too many times, held back. What if he brushed it off? What if he told me I was being dramatic? I didn't think I could handle that. So I stayed silent, letting the silence grow louder and louder in my mind until it was all I could hear. And then there's my stepmother. I've always felt like she tolerates me more than she genuinely cares about me. Don't get me wrong, she's not mean or anything. She's polite, cordial even. But there's a distance, a barrier I've never been able to cross. It's like she has this invisible wall up, and no matter how hard I try, I can't break through. Does she see me as a reminder of my dad's past? Someone she has to deal with rather than someone she wants to know? I don't have the answers, but I wish I did. As much as I wanted to blame them entirely, I knew I had my own part to play in all of this. I've never been good at expressing my feelings. I bottle everything up, hoping it'll go away, but it never does. Maybe if I'd spoken up sooner, things would be different. Maybe they would have included me. Or maybe not. The not knowing is what makes it so hard. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one photo shoot. It's about years of feeling like I'm standing on the outside looking in. It's about wanting to be part of a family that sometimes feels like it doesn't want me. And that's a pain that's hard to put into words. But I'm trying. I'm trying to understand it, to process it, to figure out where to go from here. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to keep living like this. I don't want to keep feeling like I'm not enough. I deserve to feel loved, to feel included, to feel like I matter. And maybe, just maybe, this is the wake-up call I needed to start making that happen. Everything came to a head on a quiet evening, just me sitting alone in my room, replaying the whole situation in my mind for the 100th time. I couldn't take it anymore. The feelings of exclusion, the weight of not belonging, the constant questions about my worth in this family. It was suffocating. I sat there, staring at my phone, debating whether I should call my dad or just let it go. My mind was at war with itself. Part of me screaming to speak up and demand answers, and the other part whispering that it was pointless. After all, what if nothing changed? But then something clicked. Or maybe it broke, I'm not even sure. I just knew I couldn't keep sitting there, stewing in my own hurt. I needed to say something, not just for them to hear but for me to finally let it out. So I grabbed my phone, took a deep breath and called my dad. My heart was pounding like crazy. What was I going to say? How would he react? Would this conversation fix anything, or would it just make things worse? A million questions raced through my mind, but it was too late to turn back. When he answered, his voice was casual, completely unaware of the emotional storm brewing on my end. That almost made it worse. How could he sound so calm when I felt like I was falling apart inside? I started the conversation with small talk, trying to ease into it, but it felt so fake. Eventually I just blurted it out. Dad, why wasn't I included in the family photo shoot? Silence. Complete and utter silence. For a moment I thought the call had dropped. Then he finally spoke, and his words caught me off guard. Oh. I didn't think you'd want to be part of it. Didn't think I'd want to be part of it. Are you kidding me? I felt my frustration bubbling up, but I held it back long enough to ask, why would you think that? His answer was hesitant, like he was trying to piece together an explanation that wouldn't sound too bad. He mentioned how I've seemed distant lately, how I don't always join in on family outings, how he assumed I wouldn't care about something like a photo shoot. In his mind, he thought he was sparing me. Sparing me. That hit like a punch to the gut. How could he not see that what I really wanted was the opposite? To be included, to be part of those moments, to feel like I mattered in this family. That's when I realized something that shook me to my core. He genuinely didn't know how much I was hurting. All this time, I'd been expecting him to read my mind, to pick up on my feelings without me saying a word. But the truth is, I hadn't made it clear. I'd buried my pain so deep, hidden it behind smiles and nonchalant shrugs, that he had no idea what was really going on. And while that didn't excuse his actions, it did make me pause. Maybe, just maybe, I had a role to play in this too. As we kept talking, I felt the floodgates opening. All the things I'd been holding back came pouring out. The exclusion, the constant feeling of being overlooked, the pain of not feeling like I truly belonged. I told him how much it hurt to be left out of the photo shoot. How it felt like yet another reminder that I wasn't part of the real family. My voice cracked, my words tumbled over each other, but I didn't care. I needed him to hear me, raw and unfiltered. And to his credit, he listened. Really listened. For the first time I felt like I had his full attention, like he was actually hearing what I was saying instead of brushing it off. He apologized, multiple times, and admitted that he hadn't realized how much his actions, or lack thereof, were affecting me. He didn't try to defend himself or shift the blame. He just listened and apologized. And while that didn't erase the hurt, it was a start. A small but significant step toward understanding. But the conversation didn't stop there. I brought up my stepmother, the way I've always felt a wall between us, the way her actions, or sometimes her inactions, made me feel like an outsider. He didn't have all the answers, but he promised to talk to her, to try and bridge the gap. That promise meant more to me than I could put into words. It was the first time in a long time that I felt like someone in this family was fighting for me, not just with me. The pivotal moment, though, came at the end of our conversation. My dad said something that stuck with me. "You're part of this family, whether we've done a good job of showing it or not. And I'm sorry if we've made you feel otherwise." Those words hit me like a wave. For so long I'd convinced myself that I wasn't truly part of their family, that I was just this extra piece that didn't quite fit. Hearing him say that, even if it wasn't perfect, gave me a glimmer of hope. After we hung up, I felt an odd mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, hope, and a lingering fear that things wouldn't really change. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in a while. Empowerment. For the first time I'd spoken my truth, laid my feelings bare, and it hadn't broken me. If anything, it had made me stronger. It reminded me that I have a voice, that I have the right to be heard, and that my feelings matter. And that realization was a game changer. I knew that moving forward, things wouldn't magically fix themselves overnight. But I also knew that I had taken the first step toward healing, toward finding my place in this family, and toward reclaiming my sense of worth. And that, to me, was everything. Looking back, this experience taught me so much. Yes, it hurt to feel excluded, but it also pushed me to find my voice, to stand up for myself, and to demand the connection I deserve. Families aren't perfect, blended or not, but that doesn't mean we stop trying to bridge the gaps. Communication really is everything. Sharing my feelings with my dad was terrifying, but it brought clarity and a glimmer of hope. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You are enough, you are worthy, and you deserve to be seen. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise.